For most of women's economic history, we have been confined to the private sphere. That means being relegated to activities such as cooking, cleaning, knitting, and being the primary caregiver for children. In the early 20th century, we started to see the increase in the movement of suffrage for women and labor rights, such that by the late 20th century, women were really highlighting issues such as workplace discrimination and not having equal pay with men. By the early 2000s, Neo was singing Miss Independent. That's why I love her. And then we started to see the rise of terms such as girl boss, boss babe, corporate baddie, and all of those things. But over the last couple of years, we have seen, especially on platforms such as TikTok and YouTube, an increase in sentiment where some women want to go back to traditional gender norms. We may have girl bossed a little bit too much, which I find super interesting. Now, I personally don't care what anyone else does with their own life, as long as I'm happy with my own life and my own choices. But I wanted to address this on my channel because in one of my latest videos on the 7 basic principles of wealth, I spoke about the issue of key man risk when it comes to handling your finances or your financial health. I think this can be particularly dangerous for women, so I just wanted to address it in this video. And you guys also wanted to hear me talk a little bit more about this topic, so let's get into it. One of the first things you can know about these sort of sentiments is that they tend to run in cycles, much like a bunch of other social trends. Will go from girl boss to soft life, to boss babe, to luxury living, to standing on business, and the cycle just keeps going on and on and on. And this is unsurprising. It actually reminds me of the economic cycles, that also the fact that history does tend to repeat itself, maybe not in the exact same way, but it does tend to repeat itself due to human nature. One of the best ways to illustrate this is with like politics and governance. Usually you have like, let's say there's a far left and there's a far right. Let's say the public sentiment swings to the side of the far right. Everyone is super positive about those policies and thinks that those policies are going to solve all the problems. Usually the actions will happen, the policies will come into place, and maybe it will solve some issues, but it will also create some other issues, right? Because every action has a reaction. And then what you will tend to see is that the public sentiment will go all the way towards the opposite end, and now they are on the complete opposite side and like, okay, no, this is going to solve all our problems. Those policies come into place, there's action, there's a reaction, and then people tend to run from one end to the other. Not everyone, but a lot of people tend to do that. And the reason is because the middle doesn't sell, right? You need that extremity for people to really take interest. And I think that's what's going on with a lot of these trends. We were at the extreme where women had no economic rights whatsoever, and that had a lot of issues. And now that women are working and we are fighting to be on equal footing with men, we realize that actually maybe that is not everything that is cracked out to be, and then people just run to the other end. And I'm definitely not saying that everyone has to have a middle ground with these things, because you know, you're entitled to be extremely on the left, extremely on the right, in the middle, whatever. I cannot stand people who don't stand for anything. Whatever the trend is at that time, they run with it. And if the trend changes next week, they're gonna run with that trend, even though the trends can be completely opposite towards each other. It's like, what do you stand for? Like, stand for something, okay? Stand for something, or you will literally fall for everything. And I think that we're gonna continue to see these trends because that's just the way humans are, you know? So the first point I wanted to make is one thing that is completely different between the women who are returning back to the traditional sphere in this day and age is social media and the internet. The private sphere is not what it was a couple hundred years ago because, particularly due to influencer lifestyle culture, the private sphere is completely public. Back in the day, you think people knew what other people's bedrooms looked like, or people knew what other people's living rooms looked like, or their bathrooms looked like? I remember even when you would go to some people's house, you would never be allowed in their parents' room, right? The door would always be locked. Whereas now you can see house tours of every single nook and cranny of a house, right? You will see people get ready from their underwear all the way to their big puffer jacket. You will see people do their makeup. You will see people when they first just wake up. You will see people cooking. You will see people just interacting with their family. You'll even see couples in bed. There is nothing about the private sphere that is private anymore due to social media. And the reason why this is important is because monetization of the private sphere means that it functions completely different. When women were relegated to the private sphere before, or confined to the private sphere, they could not make money being at home. The examples that we would see in history of women making money at home was maybe if they were knitting and they were selling their knits to like their friends and stuff, but that was more like a side hustle. You wouldn't have seen someone making a killing, making more than their husband who would be going out to work knitting at home. That would be highly rare. Whereas now we know that someone can be putting on makeup in their bathroom every day and make more than someone who goes out to work. And so that completely changes things, because whether they're doing this consciously or subconsciously differs from creator to creator. But one thing I really find a little bit deceptive is these women will come and will present themselves as, you know, going back to traditional gender norms, being taken care of, but then at the same time is wanting to garner an audience for monetization purposes. It's tricky because I don't blame them for wanting to do it, but let's be honest about what it is that we are doing here. And I think there will be some genuine people who are genuinely looked after and taken care of, who might just come to social media for a hobby. But there are a lot of people who are pretending to be, who doesn't need to work because they're being taken care of, but is actually trying to create a career for themselves out of that. I don't tend to place blame on influencers. I think consumers should take more responsibility for identifying what it is that they are consuming and using critical thinking. The moment someone is portraying something to you, especially on social media, even if someone shows you that they are like, I'm just relaxing, I'm at the spa, I did nothing today, but they did set up the camera to record to show you that they are relaxing. So how much relaxing are they actually doing, right? People are still trying to sell you things. It's the same thing with this whole soft life era like that was going on. I'm just, you know, taking bubble baths and lighting candles and in my relaxing clothes. I'm not doing any work. But then at the same time are like, okay, but go buy my candle with my affiliate link. Go buy this tracksuit with my affiliate link. Go buy this face steamer. And they are selling you, I'm not doing anything, but then trying to make money off of you. You cannot take something that you see online and then apply it to your offline life and think that you're going to have the same result. Because let's take Nara Smith, for example, right? People uphold her as like a traditional wife because she cooks from scratch for her family. But like, she's not a traditional wife. She has a career, she has a modeling career to fall back on. Women who were in traditional gender norms before did not have a modeling career to fall back on. She is garnering an audience on TikTok of millions of followers. I don't know if she's on Instagram as well, probably is. Millions of followers, and as you guys would have noticed by now, an audience is the new currency. So even though she may not even be monetizing her current audience right now, she may be, she may not be. If, for example, her husband, he was no longer in the picture for whichever reason, she would be financially fine. She could release the cookbook that everyone is asking her for and literally make millions. This is not the same private sphere that we are seeing before because of social media and because of people's ability to monetize in the private sphere. My only point with this is, if you are someone who is not online, and what I mean by that is that you are not monetizing your life, do not be deceived by the influencer culture of returning back to traditional norms, because you can't do the same things that they're doing. You can't, right? You can stay at home and do all of those things, but you're not making money from it the way they are. So be careful when you're being influenced and really think about, does this actually apply to my life, right? You might be watching someone thinking, oh yeah, I want to be just like her. I'm going to be at home. I'm not going to be doing anything besides cooking for my children. She's cooking for her kids. She's making £10,000 a month. You're not. The reason why history repeats itself is because we tend to forget, right? We tend to forget. That's why you look at these economic cycles. We have recessions all the time. Property bubbles always come back because we forget about what happens in the past and then we fall into the same habits. So let's remind ourselves of the exact reason why women did not want to be confined to just the traditional gender norms. When one person has all of the economic power, they have access to all of the finances, they are making all the money. A lot of women were subject to emotional abuse because they didn't have economic power. They were subject to financial abuse because they didn't have economic power. They were subject to physical abuse because they didn't have any economic power, because they were only operating in the private sphere. But you need money for everything. And this is not to be doom and gloom and say, oh, like if a guy has money, then he's gonna, you know, be manipulative and controlling and this or that. Even if you put that aside, what happens if that person gets sick? What happens if that person loses their job? What happens if that person gets laid off? What happens if that person decides to divorce you? So many instances that can cause the main person who is the breadwinner to not have those finances anymore. And what position does that leave you in? One of the things that I've been binge watching lately is Ramit Sethi. On his YouTube channel, he has these couples that come and they are usually in some sort of financial difficulty. In a lot of the couples, you have one couple who knows nothing about their finances and then one who takes control. And it's so interesting because one of the questions he usually asks them is, what happens if your partner, who is the one who takes care of all the money, is no longer here? What are you going to do? And then you just see people start stuttering like, it's like, and that's not saying, right, that you have to work. There are things that you can do to make sure that you are protected and that you mitigate key man risk as much as possible. And that is as simple as just understanding the finances of the situation. I was watching one of these like interviews today, and the woman didn't know that they were in $500,000 worth of debt. And then she wanted to kind of like blame her partner and be like, oh, he didn't do this and he didn't do that. But it's also your responsibility. There's also other legal things that you can do when it comes to like deed titles of the house and stuff like that, making sure that your name is on it as well. If your partner has a limited liability company, are you one of the shareholders, right? Because if you do decide to stay at home, which a lot of women do, let's say for example because of childcare is so expensive in the West, right, that like some women, it saves them as a couple more money for the women to stay at home and look after the child than pay for childcare. But if you do that, that is economic contribution. So you should have equal footing when it comes to some of the things that your partner is earning, or when it comes to the investment that are being made. Like we've just seen, there are so many ways to monetize being in the private sphere that you don't have to be at home and not make money, right? You can be at home, you don't have to become a content creator. There are so many ways to make money from your laptop, or even if you don't want to work because you don't have to work, make sure that you are invested, okay? Make sure that you have whether it's a stocks and shares ISA or a Roth IRA, make sure that you have investments that you can rely on, or insurance. Insurance is a big one. Making sure that your main breadwinner has life insurance. There's even like some sort of salary insurances that you can get. I can't remember what they're called, but you can get salary insurance. Just making sure that you have things in place that mitigate that key man risk. No one ever plans to be in a tricky financial situation where the main breadwinner is no longer there, or you end up in a divorce. I don't want to go on and on, but I think my point is clear. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'm also going to be doing a free webinar soon on how to achieve financial independence through property and globalization, and I can't wait because that's everything that I've been doing for the last 2 years. Tickets will be out next week. In the meantime, you can sign up to my mailing list or my Substack newsletter below to make sure that you don't miss out on those tickets. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.